Looking at my shaking hands, my daughter said, "Don't spill anything, just this once," and slapped my hand in front of everyone. That was the moment I knew I wasn't her mother anymore. I was just the old woman at the table, the one they let cook the meal but not belong to the celebration. The one they forgot was even human. They say you get used to being invisible. I think that's a lie people like to believe, to make the fading feel like choice. But I was never given a choice. I became invisible by design, by usefulness, by being the woman who always made sure the lamb didn't overcook, that the good silver was polished, that the wine glasses didn't have streaks. By being the person no one noticed unless something went wrong. My name is Ellen, and I turned 75 the same day my daughter slapped me. The morning had started like every birthday before it, quietly. There were no calls, no cards, not even a text. I told myself it was fine. They'd remember later. People are busy. People forget. But I remembered. I pulled on the soft blue cardigan I always wore for special dinners. James had loved that color. I thawed the lamb early, roasted it with rosemary the way he liked. I even set out the little place cards, though no one ever noticed I made them. The house smelled like comfort, like something sacred. That was always my way of showing love, feeding people, making everything just a little warmer than they expected. The kind of warmth that costs nothing but feels like everything. By 5, the guests arrived. My daughter, Helen, her husband Greg, their 2 boys. My son Michael came in late, talking about a work call he couldn't get off. They brought nothing. No flowers, no wine. Not even a joke about my age. Just coats thrown over the back of the couch and loud stories that didn't include me. Helen didn't even look at me when she came in. Just dropped her purse on the entry table and said, "Is dinner ready?" I served them. I didn't eat right away. I wanted to make sure everything was perfect. I filled glasses, passed around the lamb, ladled out the potatoes. I asked if anyone wanted more bread, and Helen just sighed, like I was annoying her. "Mom, sit down already." "You're making it awkward," she said. As I sat down, my hand trembling just slightly with the weight of age and heat, my water glass wobbled on the plate's edge. "Don't spill anything, just once," Helen hissed, slapping my arm like I was some clumsy child. I froze. I looked at her and didn't see my daughter. I saw a woman who had lost respect for me so completely that she could hit me and speak to me like I was nothing. Her voice wasn't angry, it was sharp and bored. Like she didn't even care enough to be upset. Just annoyed. Like I was a stain she couldn't get out of the rug. Like she couldn't stand the thought of me messing up her image of a perfect dinner. She didn't say, "Are you okay?" She didn't say, "Let me help you." She hit me. In front of everyone. And then, the worst part, no one said anything. Greg didn't even look up. He just kept chewing. He didn't ask if I was all right. Michael kept staring down at his plate, like he hadn't seen a thing. My grandsons giggled like it was a joke. No one said, "That was wrong." No one said, "You don't treat your mother that way." They just kept eating. I sat there with my arm stinging, my face burning, and my chest feeling like it was collapsing in on itself. I didn't know where to look. Helen kept going. When I reached for the gravy, she waved her hand and said, "No one needs more gravy, Mom. It's too salty anyway." When I tried to pass the bread and used one hand because my wrist hurt, she snapped, "Use both hands, please. We don't want another spill." When I tried to share a small story about James, something warm, something from when the kids were little, she interrupted, "You've told that one already, Mom. Let's talk about something new." She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask if I needed help with the food. She didn't say happy birthday. Not once. She didn't ask about the cardigan I wore, even though it was James's favorite color. She didn't notice the fresh rosemary in the lamb. She didn't thank me for the food. She just ate. Criticized. Corrected me. The grandsons got loud halfway through dinner, roughhousing at the table, and Helen turned to me. "Can you do something about them? They're your grandkids." I felt my chest tighten. My voice failed. Later, when I brought out the cake, a recipe James and I used to bake together every December, she barely glanced at it. We don't really do dessert anymore, but thanks, she said. Greg and Michael got up before I even cut it. They left their plates where they were. No one offered to help clean. That night, after they left, plates still dirty, chairs pushed back, cake untouched, I stood in the kitchen. My cardigan smelled like rosemary and shame. I looked at my reflection in the microwave door. I saw a woman I'd barely recognized, tired, hollow, spent. The ticking of the clock filled the room. I didn't cry. Instead, I remembered. I remembered every time Helen called me because she couldn't make rent or needed help with the boys. Every time I transferred her money without asking questions. Every time I said no to a new coat or new shoes so she wouldn't have to feel embarrassed. I remembered when she was little. How I stayed up with her when she was sick. How I taught her to read. How I gave her my share of dinner when money was tight. I remembered pawning my wedding ring to pay for her first semester of college. She never asked how I got the money. She just assumed it would be there. I remembered watching her walk across the stage at graduation. She smiled for the cameras. She didn't look for me. I remembered how she joked to her friends that I was old school, that I didn't get it. I remembered her rolling her eyes when I talked too long. How she changed the subject whenever I mentioned my aches. How she told the boys, Grandma's just being dramatic, when I asked for quiet. I remembered all of it, and I remembered the way she slapped my arm. Not out of fear, not even out of anger, just impatience. Like I was nothing, like I was in the way. The plate I had saved for myself grew cold. I didn't warm it. I poured the wine I hadn't drunk into the sink, one slow stream after another. I washed every dish, scrubbed every pan, wiped every surface. Not one message from Helen. Not one word from Michael. Not a single text from Greg. I sat down at the empty table. The candles were burned low. The flowers I had bought for myself wilted at the edges. I stared at the empty chairs. I had sat 6 places. Only one was for me. I felt like I was sitting Shiva for my own love. My own value. My own voice. The clock ticked. Tick. 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 It sounded like applause for a life no one noticed. So I stood up, slowly, with the stiffness of someone who has carried too much for too long. I folded the tablecloth, blew out the candles, turned off the lights, and I made a decision. Not loud, not angry, just final. But I didn't slam a door. I didn't write a letter. I didn't curse them out in a voicemail. No. I just went to bed, alone, on my 75th birthday, and fell asleep to the sound of nothing at all. Because sometimes, silence isn't empty. Sometimes, silence is the beginning of something new. When I woke up the next morning, I didn't feel rested. I felt quiet. Not peaceful, just still, like the world had paused inside me. My body ached from the hours I spent on my feet the day before, but the deeper ache, the one in my chest, felt sharper now, like a bruise that had finally bloomed. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the spot where Helen had sat the night before. Her chair was still slightly pulled back. Her napkin still folded on the plate. She never used it. I could still hear her voice. Don't spill anything, just once. The way she said it, like I was a child who never learned basic manners. Like everything I did was an accident waiting to happen. There was something so final in the way she looked at me, like she had stopped seeing me as someone who mattered. It wasn't just the slap. It was the tone, the disinterest, the way her words came out like I was wasting her time. It wasn't just last night. It had been building for years. There was the time I called her to ask if she could take me to the doctor, and she sighed so loud I apologized for needing help. Mom, I have a lot going on right now, she had said. Can't you ask Michael? Or maybe figure out a rideshare or something. I remember standing there in the living room, phone pressed to my ear, and thinking, did I just ask too much? Then I remembered all the times I dropped everything to be there for her. When her first son was born and she was scared to be alone with him. When Greg was out of work and she needed someone to babysit while she job hunted. I came every day. No questions asked. I cooked. I cleaned. I rocked the baby to sleep while she cried in the bathroom. And still, she made me feel like a burden. I remembered how she told her children, right in front of me, "Grandma doesn't always remember things, so don't bother her with school stuff." I wasn't confused. I had just asked how their science fair had gone. "It's fine, Mom," she said, smiling like it was a joke. "You're not really up on that stuff anymore." I smiled, too. I always did, because saying something would have made her uncomfortable. And I had learned that her comfort mattered more than my truth. But I remembered. I remembered when she used my birthday money, a gift from my sister meant for me, to pay her phone bill. "I'll pay you back," she said. She never did. I never asked. I remembered how she once scolded me in front of a store clerk because I asked a question too slowly. "She's a little older," she whispered loudly. "You know how it gets." I remembered. I remembered the day I brought over a photo album to show her. It had pictures of James and me, pictures of her when she was little. She barely looked. "Oh, I've seen these before," she said. "You should really digitize them or something." No warmth. No memory shared. Just a dismissal. Then she turned on the television and started scrolling through her phone. The realization hit me hard that morning, sitting at the table. It wasn't that she didn't love me. It was that she didn't see me. Not as a whole person. Not as a woman. Not even as a mother anymore. Just as an old thing. An inconvenience with hands that shook and stories that dragged on too long. There was no gratitude. No softness. No kindness in the way she spoke to me. Just a constant undercurrent of frustration, like she was tired of pretending I mattered. I stood up and wandered into the living room. The flowers I had arranged for the table were still there, drooping a little now. She hadn't said anything about them. Not last night. Not ever. I saw the card I had written for myself. A silly little thing. A habit I picked up from James. We used to write our own birthday cards to ourselves and tuck them under our plates. It made us laugh. Last night, I had done it again. One last time. I opened it and read it slowly. "Dear Ellen, you made it. Through everything, you're still standing. Still kind. Still trying. And that means something. Love me." I held the card against my chest. It was the only birthday message I received. The grief was different this time. Not loud. Not sharp. Just heavy, like carrying a basket filled with small stones, each one a word, a look, a forgotten kindness. When James was alive, he used to remind me that my heart was too big. "It's your gift and your weakness," he'd say, brushing my cheek. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had loved people so hard they forgot I needed it back. Later that morning, I opened the kitchen drawer and pulled out the old calendar I used to track family things. Birthdays. Appointments. I flipped back through the pages. Helen's dentist. Her anniversary. The boys' soccer games. All written in neat handwriting. Not once had anyone asked if I had plans. If I was lonely. If I needed anything. I turned to the last few pages, the months ahead. Blank. That's what it felt like, blank. And in that silence, I could hear myself think. I could finally hear the truth. I had not been living. I had been surviving in service to other people, waiting for moments that would never come. Apologies that were never offered. Thank yous never spoken. Even a simple acknowledgement. "We see you. We care. We remember who you are." It had all been one-sided. I sat back down and made a list. Just for myself. Things I did that no one noticed. Cooked every holiday meal for 30 years. Paid Helen's rent 5 times. Helped with childcare for 4 years straight. Bought school supplies without being asked. Drove an hour in the snow to bring soup when Greg had the flu. Stayed silent during every insult so the kids wouldn't feel tension. Remembered everyone's birthdays. Baked James's favorite cookies even when I had a migraine. Cried alone in the laundry room on Christmas Eve when no one showed up on time. Cleaned up spilled wine from their parties without a word. I looked at the list. It went on. I flipped the page and started another. More things I did without thanks, without notice, without acknowledgement. Bought Helen a car after her accident. Let them borrow money when they forgot to pay the utility bill. Covered for her when she couldn't attend a school event. Sent care packages when she was sick. Paid for a hotel when Greg lost his job and they had to move. Watched their dog for 2 weeks while they vacationed. I filled another page. I stopped counting. I wasn't angry. Not exactly. I was awake. It was like waking up from a long dream where you think you're part of something special, only to realize you were standing in the background the whole time. Helen didn't hate me, but she didn't see me. Not the way I saw her. And that difference changed everything. Because I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life being invisible. That afternoon, I packed away the dishes from the night before. I folded the tablecloth. I put the leftover lamb in the freezer. I tied up the garbage, carried it outside, and stood in the yard for a moment. The air was cold, the sky pale and wide. I thought about James, how he would have handled all this. He would have put a hand on my back, pulled me in close, and said something that made me feel like I still mattered. Without him, I was left with their silence. And silence, I was learning, is where truth grows roots. I walked back inside. Took one last look at the dining room, at the empty chairs, at the space where my voice used to try to reach them. And I whispered out loud, to no one in particular, I see me. I see me now. It wasn't much, but it was the first time in years I had said it. And I meant it. Then I wrote one more thing at the bottom of my list. Today I saw myself. And it was enough. I closed the notebook, put it in the drawer, and sat down in the quiet. There was still grief. But beneath it, there was something stronger beginning to form, a kind of peace. Not because things were fine, but because, finally, I knew I didn't have to pretend they were. I didn't plan to do anything dramatic. I didn't wake up the next day with fire in my chest or revenge in my bones. What I felt instead was something quieter, something colder, a kind of stillness I hadn't known in years. It was like everything that had hurt me had burned itself out, and all that remained was the truth. And the truth was this. I was done. Not angry. Not loud. Just done. I stood in the kitchen again that morning. Same cardigan. Same cup of tea. Same chair. Same silence. Only now, it wasn't a silence I feared. It was one I finally claimed. I opened the drawer with a notepad from the night before, the one where I had listed all the things I had done without thanks. The ink had dried, but the weight of those words still sat heavy. I flipped the page again. I didn't need to write more. I already knew what came next. I went to the living room. The morning sun streamed in through the curtains, catching the dust in soft golden trails. I sat down, picked up the phone, and dialed the number of the realtor James and I had used years ago when we thought about downsizing. Marianne? It's Ellen. I think I'm ready to sell. There was a pause. A little gasp. You're home? Are you sure? I looked around at the walls that had held every version of me, young wife, exhausted mother, hopeful grandmother, invisible old woman. Yes, I said. I'm sure. By noon, we had a plan. By the end of the week, the house would be listed. Next came the accounts. I pulled out my folder of documents. Bank statements. Loan records. I checked the accounts Helen had access to not directly, but through shared bills, linked cards, old arrangements that had never been reviewed. I closed every one of them. The mortgage assistance? Gone. The card that covered their groceries now and then? Disabled. The rainy day fund I had quietly built for emergencies that were never mine? Transferred to a private account with a new password. Each click of the mouse felt like a breath I hadn't taken in years. I called the lawyer next. Asked to update my will. He was surprised, but polite. You want to remove your daughter as primary beneficiary? Yes, I do. Do you want to name someone else? Yes, I said again. My granddaughter. She was the only one who had ever asked about James. The only one who ever sat with me without looking at her phone. The only one who ever asked me how I was without needing something in return. The lawyer asked more questions. I answered each one with a calm I didn't expect to feel. When we were done, I made tea and sat back down. And then, as if on cue, Helen called. "Hey, Mom," she said, her voice breezy. "I just realized I left my baking dish at your place. Do you mind dropping it off if you go into town?" I looked at the sink. It was there, untouched, still dirty from the lamb. "No," I said. "I won't be going into town." She hesitated. "Okay. Well, maybe Michael can grab it." "Sure." She laughed a little. "You okay? You sound weird." "I'm fine. Just tired." "Well, try to get some rest. I might swing by tomorrow if we have time." She didn't ask how I was. Didn't mention my birthday. Didn't apologize for anything. I hung up and stared at the phone for a long time. Then I stood and began packing. Halfway through the hallway closet, I found an old box I had forgotten, a small shoebox tied with fading ribbon. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. From James. Some were notes he had left tucked into my purse before he went to work. Others were birthday cards, anniversary messages, apologies written after a disagreement. I unfolded one, written the year Helen was born. "She'll need you for everything. But don't forget you're a woman too. Not just a mother. Not just a giver. Take care of you, Ellen." I held that letter in my hand and cried, not out of sadness, but because he had seen me. All of me. And suddenly, the weight of what I had allowed began to suffocate me. I had ignored that woman he saw. I had buried her under a pile of favors, sacrifices, and silence. I could have yelled, but I chose to remain silent for Helen. So the boys wouldn't feel tension. So the family wouldn't fall apart. I paid for everything, but they still asked me to leave their conversations. I made room for them in every corner of my life, but they didn't offer me a single chair. And now, staring at that letter, I remembered something else. One summer evening, Helen had come home crying after a breakup. She was in college. I stayed up with her all night. I made soup. I wrapped her in blankets. I sat with her until the tears stopped. And the next day, she said, "Thanks, I guess," and left for a party without looking back. It hurt then, but I swallowed it. That pattern had repeated over and over. She would stumble, I would catch her. She would demand, I would give. And when I needed her, even for something small, I was inconvenient. The house sold faster than I expected. A young couple bought it, newly married, expecting their first child. They walked through the place like it was magic, touching the walls gently, asking about the rose bushes out back. "My husband planted those," I told them. "They're beautiful," the woman said. They looked at me like I mattered. That night, I slept soundly. I told Helen about the sale through a short message. "I've sold the house and am moving next month. I'll let you know the new address if you need it." She didn't call. She texted back an hour later. "Wait, what? Why didn't you tell us sooner? What's going on?" I didn't answer. She tried again the next day. "Is this about the birthday dinner?" "Seriously, Mom, that was nothing. Don't be so sensitive." I sat at my desk and read those words over and over. Don't be so sensitive. I wanted to scream. I wanted to list everything, every moment, every quiet insult, everything she forgot, every time she treated me like a faded photograph. But I didn't. I simply closed the phone, because I finally understood she didn't want to understand. I finished packing, gave away what I didn't need, boxed up James's books, my old recipes, the framed photo of us on our last trip to the coast. I moved into a small apartment near the ocean. Just 2 rooms and a window with a view of the sea. The first morning I woke up there, the air smelled like salt and morning. I brewed tea and sat by the window. A seagull landed on the railing. I smiled. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anyone to arrive. For the first time, I didn't owe anyone anything. And I felt free. That was the beginning. Not of loneliness, but of living on my own terms, of remembering who I was before they made me small, and of deciding that silence would no longer be the place I disappeared into. Silence would be the space where I built my life back again. This time, for me. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Helen had called me 6 times that morning. The night before, she sent 2 texts. "Mom, what is going on? Call me. Are you really doing this just to punish us?" I didn't respond. The more silence I gave, the louder they became. By the afternoon, my inbox was full. Missed calls, voicemails, messages from Greg, from Michael, even one from Helen's coworker, a woman I barely knew who had once asked me for a pie recipe at a company party. "Your family is really worried," her message said. "Maybe you should just call them and clear the air." Clear the air. As if this had been a misunderstanding. As if I had overreacted. Helen didn't want to talk about what she had done. She wanted me to come back to my old role, quiet, agreeable, always available. But I wasn't available anymore. I made myself a cup of tea and took it out to the small patio. The ocean wind brushed through my hair as I sat wrapped in a blanket. I watched the waves roll in and out, each one like breath. Deep, steady, indifferent to the world's noise. My phone buzzed again. This time, a message from Helen. "You're being selfish. What kind of mother sells the family house without telling anyone?" Selfish. That word hit me in the chest. All my life, I had been the opposite of selfish. I gave my time, my energy, my money, my home. I gave up sleep. I gave up plans. I gave up asking for anything. And now, the first time I chose myself, I was called selfish. I wanted to reply. I wanted to say, "Do you remember who paid your rent when you couldn't? Who cooked every Christmas dinner? Who watched your children when you went on trips with Greg? Who cleaned up your kitchen after you left in a rush again and again?" But I didn't, because she knew. She just didn't care enough to remember it now. Later that evening, someone knocked on my door. I froze. It was Helen. She looked tired, frustrated. She didn't smile. She didn't even say hello. "Why didn't you tell me you were moving?" I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "Because I knew what your response would be." She scoffed. "You're acting like we did something terrible." It was just one comment. "You always take things so personally." There it was again. The rewriting. The shrinking of my pain into something unreasonable. "Helen," I said quietly, "you slapped my arm like I was a misbehaving child." And no one said anything. Not even you. She shook her head. "It wasn't a slap. It was a tap. You were about to spill something. You're exaggerating." I stood very still. Not because I was afraid, but because I needed to remember this moment. The way she looked at me. The tone in her voice. Like I was difficult. Like I was creating problems. "You don't get to decide what it felt like for me," I said. "And I won't pretend anymore." Her face changed. It was the first time I had ever said something like that. "So that's it? You're just cutting us off?" I looked past her at the waves. "No. I'm just choosing me." For once. She opened her mouth like she might say something more. But then she turned and walked away. The next morning, the storm hit. Michael called and left a voicemail so full of anger I had to sit down. "This is ridiculous, Mom. You're tearing the family apart. You want us to feel guilty? Fine, we feel guilty. Happy now? You're punishing everyone because of one moment. Do you even care about your grandchildren?" Then Greg wrote a message. "I can't believe you'd do this over a misunderstanding. This isn't the mother I knew. You're being dramatic and hurtful. Do you want us to beg? Is that what this is about?" Even my cousin Rachel chimed in. "I heard you sold the house. Everyone's talking about it. You're scaring your family, Ellen. You need to stop this." And then came Helen's barrage. A series of messages over 2 days. So this is who you really are. You're abandoning us in the most passive-aggressive way. I never thought my own mother would do something like this. You're ruining everything we built. No one asked why I did what I did. No one asked how I felt. They just wanted me to undo it, to go back, to resume the part one had always played. But I wouldn't. And then, just before the quiet began again, Helen sent one last message. You think you're strong, but you're just bitter. I hope you're happy sitting alone in that tiny place, surrounded by nothing. You've made your point. Congratulations. Bitterness. That was the word they used when I no longer bent over backwards. That was what they called me when I stopped saying yes. The next few days were quiet. No more calls. No more messages. No more knocks. I cooked simple meals. I rearranged the bookshelves. I played an old record James had loved. I walked along the beach and let the wind tangle my hair. I swept the porch. I folded my laundry slowly. I wrote in my journal. And then the letters started coming. Not just from Helen. From Greg. From Michael. From the cousins. Even from my sister, who hadn't spoken to me in over a year. Letters full of concern. Letters full of confusion. Letters that said things like, "This isn't you. We just want to talk. We miss you." And underneath it all, I could feel the message they weren't saying. Come back to being useful. Come back to giving. Come back to making things easy for us. But I didn't, because it was never really about me. It was about the role I played in their lives. And now that I had stepped out of it, they didn't know what to do. I sat one night with all the letters spread across my little table. I read every one. Then I took out a new sheet of paper and wrote only one sentence. You taught me to stay silent. I finally listened. I folded it, placed it on the top of the stack, and tucked the pile into a drawer. It was done. And for the first time in decades, I felt no guilt. Only relief. But the most unexpected thing happened a week later. It wasn't another angry message. It wasn't a call or a knock at the door. It was a letter. A simple white envelope, no return address, just my name in neat handwriting. Inside was a card. Handwritten. From my granddaughter. Dear Grandma, I don't know exactly what happened. Mom is really upset and no one is explaining much. But I just wanted to say I love you. I miss your stories. I miss your hugs. I miss the way you made me feel safe. If you don't want to talk to anyone else, that's okay. I just wanted you to know that I still see you. Love, Claire. I held that letter for a long time. And then I cried. Not from sadness. Not from guilt. But because in all that noise, one voice had reached through and reminded me that I was still someone. That I still mattered. Claire had always been different. When she came over, she helped without being asked. She sat with me and asked questions about James, about my childhood, about the recipes I kept folded in a drawer. She noticed things. She noticed me. Her letter didn't ask anything of me. It didn't demand an apology or expect me to return to a role. It simply said, I see you. And for the first time in months, I felt peace rise from something warmer than silence. The next morning, I wrote back, Dear Claire, thank you for your letter. It meant more to me than I can say. Sometimes people forget that even mothers and grandmothers need kindness too. I'm okay now. And I hope you always remember that your voice matters, even when others try to speak over it. You are a light. And I love you too, Grandma. I didn't say more. I didn't explain the whole story. I just gave her what she gave me, honesty. After that, the silence from the rest of the family returned. But I no longer felt erased by it. I had made my choice, and for once, it was a choice for me. They still posted things online, vague complaints about betrayal, about aging parents being difficult, about people changing. I didn't respond. I didn't react. I simply watched it all pass like a storm moving over the sea. One day, I walked to the market. A woman about my age, a stranger, stopped me near the fruit stand. I know you don't know me, she said, but I just wanted to say. I heard about what happened. You were right to take your space. It gave me courage to do the same. I smiled. It was small, but it reached deep. Maybe we spend so long believing we're just supposed to endure. That being needed is the same as being loved. That we have to earn rest, dignity, peace. But we don't. We're allowed to say no. We're allowed to protect our hearts. We're allowed to ask, and who is looking out for me? That was the question I had never dared to ask. And now I knew the answer. I could look out for me. I sat on the shore that evening. The sun hung low, casting long gold across the waves. I brought James's old sweater with me. It still smelled faintly of cedar. I thought about all the birthdays spent waiting, all the apologies I never received, all the dinners cooked, the favors done, the moments swallowed. And I felt nothing but calm. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't cold. I was simply done. I didn't need them to understand. I didn't need them to approve. I didn't need their permission to feel whole. I had grieved the version of me that existed only in service to them. And in that grief, I found something unexpected. Freedom. Not the loud kind, not the kind you shout about, but the quiet, steady kind that comes from finally saying, enough. So, if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever felt like your silence was taken for weakness, know this. You are not alone. And you are allowed to take your life back. Because I finally did. And I realized, age is not about weakness. It's about dignity. And I won't be afraid to tell the truth anymore. Even if it hurts.